Since the dawn of civilization, secret societies have left their mark not through open declarations, but through symbols. Carved into temples, hidden in manuscripts, woven into architecture, they were more than decorations. They were codes. What once appeared only in midnight rituals, whispered in subterranean chambers, lit by torches, now shines under neon lights, projected on screens, and displayed proudly in storefronts. Have you ever wondered why the same shapes, the same hidden patterns, seem to reappear in places that should have nothing in common? Think about it. The eye that sees all, the serpent twisting into infinity, the chalice and the star. Symbols that guided the minds of initiates centuries ago now hide in plain sight, on logos, in advertisements, in films seen by millions. Coca-Cola, Disney, global icons of culture and entertainment. Could it really be coincidence that their designs echo the same codes once guarded in the vaults of the Illuminati or the Rosicrucians? Or is it evidence that rituals never died? They simply evolved, becoming invisible ceremonies we participate in without knowing. What you'll discover in this video may surprise you. We'll trace the path of symbols from stone temples to corporate empires, uncovering how rituals transformed into hidden technology for influence, how forbidden knowledge re-emerged disguised as culture. Secret societies always knew that the key to mind control was not force, but subtle repetition, imagery that bypasses reason and shapes belief. And once you start to see these signs, you cannot unsee them. Did you notice how certain brands evoke more than desire? How they create loyalty, almost devotion? What if that was never an accident? Tonight, we'll walk together through these shadows, revealing truths most dismiss as coincidence. Write in the comments, "I see the hidden signs," and subscribe, not out of habit, but as a step deeper into this circle of revelations. Because once the symbols are revealed, the story they tell leads far beyond logos and brands, into the very heart of power itself. In the 1920s, a man named Edward Bernays changed the rules of persuasion. Known as the father of modern propaganda, he didn't just sell products, he engineered consent. Through carefully crafted campaigns, he proved that the masses could be guided, not by logic, but by desire, fear, and suggestion. What seemed like harmless advertisements carried hidden codes, symbols, and psychological triggers. Have you ever felt compelled to want something without knowing why? That was no accident. It was manipulation, dressed as choice. Within the shadows, secret societies recognized the potential. Propaganda became the perfect channel for their forbidden knowledge, a way to weave hidden symbols and occult rituals into everyday life. What was once confined to candlelit chambers now slipped into newspapers, posters, radio broadcasts. The unseen learned to speak through images and repetition, embedding influence into the collective mind. And the brilliance of it all, people believed they were free, even as their thoughts were being shaped. Imagine posters that stirred patriotism with ancient codes, films that disguised rituals as entertainment, brands that evoked loyalty through subtle repetition of sacred geometry. The public saw only products, stories, art. But beneath it, the hand of hidden power moved, orchestrating emotions with precision. It was no longer about selling soap or cigarettes. It was about controlling perception itself. Write in the comments, "I will not be controlled." And the techniques only grew sharper. Psychological influence evolved with every decade, each generation exposed to new waves of messaging that carried echoes of the same dark agenda. What you thought was progress was often programming. What you believed was choice was often choreography. The documents hinted that even global icons, companies, films, campaigns were part of a larger web of conspiracies, carefully designed to mold consciousness. But that's only the surface. Let's go deeper. Because if propaganda became the ritual of the modern age, the question remains, How far has this silent influence stretched into our daily lives? And what truths still hide in the shadows of the messages we consume every day? The deeper you look, the more undeniable the pattern becomes. The triangle, the all-seeing eye, the serpent curling in endless spirals. Shapes that belong to temples, older than history, suddenly resurfacing in commercials, on packaging, in films that capture millions of eyes at once. Are they merely aesthetic choices, or deliberate marks left behind by secret societies with an agenda too subtle to confront openly? The documents from 1974 already warned of subliminal cues, silent triggers hidden in plain sight, capable of altering decisions without the viewer ever realizing. And if the studies confirmed that such influence was possible, why would those with hidden power not exploit it? Imagine watching a 30-second advertisement. The colors flash, the images repeat, the music pulls at your emotions. You laugh, you feel hunger, you crave belonging. But in the background, lines and symbols appear for just a fraction of a second. Not long enough for the conscious eye to notice, but long enough for the subconscious to absorb. Psychological influence doesn't need to shout. It works best in whispers. It thrives in shadows, behind the curtain of awareness, where forbidden knowledge slips directly into the collective mind. And these marks are not random. The eye gazing from pyramids, the serpent coiling around itself, the triangle balanced on its point, each carries with it ancient codes, once used in occult rituals to summon devotion, fear, or transformation. Now, rebranded as design, they weave themselves into daily life. The logo you trust, the film you love, the brand you cannot live without. They become silent companions, guiding you with unseen strings. Write in the comments, "I will not be controlled." Researchers noted how repeated exposure to these cues reshapes perception. A product becomes more than a product. A leader becomes more than a leader. Symbols embed emotional resonance, bypassing logic, binding entire populations with invisible threads. The dark agenda is not about forcing submission. It is about teaching the mind to accept control as natural, even desirable. And once these cues saturate every corner of culture, from billboards to the architecture of cities, from films to the currency in your pocket, awakening becomes harder because the unseen becomes the familiar. But that's only the surface. Let's go deeper. Because if these symbols operate so effectively in silence, the question is no longer whether they influence us, but how far this conditioning reaches, and what hidden design lies behind the repetition that surrounds us every single day. By the 1950s, the world had entered a new phase of experimentation. Hidden behind closed doors, in institutions that claimed to serve science and security, tests began that would later be whispered about under a single name, MK Ultra. Officially, they were projects to understand the mind. In reality, they were trials in manipulation, experiments in how subtle cues, carefully applied, could guide behavior without resistance. And while some of these programs have been exposed, fragments declassified, much of their essence never disappeared. It seeped into culture, into advertising, into the very architecture of communication. What was once ritual in hidden chambers became ritual on screens, disguised as entertainment and persuasion. Propaganda shifted form. It no longer shouted orders, it whispered through repetition, color, and sound. A logo repeated endlessly until it felt like truth. A color scheme chosen not by chance, but by psychological influence, designed to trigger hunger, trust, fear, or desire. A jingle, echoing in the back of your mind, long after the commercial ended. These were not accidents of creativity. They were the inheritance of forbidden knowledge, refined through decades of study in laboratories that merged science with occult rituals. Have you ever noticed how certain brands evoke emotions stronger than logic, as if devotion itself were being engineered? The hidden power of these methods lies in their invisibility. You do not see them as control. you see them as choice. Yet the more you look, the clearer the pattern becomes. Advertising is not simply commerce, it is initiation. A ritual in which the collective mind is guided, gently but firmly, toward obedience to symbols it does not consciously understand. The triangle, the eye, the spiral serpent. Hidden symbols woven into campaigns, amplifying meaning in ways reason cannot detect. And when repeated across decades, across cultures, they condition the collective like a spell spoken not once, but millions of times. Write in the comments, "I will not be controlled." Researchers of the time already knew this. Subliminal cues worked because the subconscious did not filter them. The shadows understood that if you repeat an image enough times, it bypasses resistance, embedding itself as part of reality. And when entire industries took these findings and wrapped them in the glamour of cinema, the comfort of television, the appeal of music, the line between influence and ritual collapsed completely. Occult rituals once demanded altars and chants. Now they require only a screen, a melody, and a message disguised as harmless. But the deeper truth is that propaganda is no longer limited to selling products. It sells ideas. It sells identities. It sells entire narratives of history. Think of how a single film can reshape perception of an event, or how a carefully staged broadcast can unite millions under one belief. The same methods used to sell cigarettes in the 1920s now sell wars, leaders, ideologies. What you believe to be spontaneous. Awakening may, in truth, be the result of programming planted in shadows long before you heard the words. And so the question lingers. If modern propaganda is nothing more than the evolution of ancient codes and hidden experiments, what other layers of manipulation remain unseen? If every color, every sound, every symbol is part of a carefully crafted ritual, how much of your reality is truly your own? And how much is the reflection of a design written long before you were born? The answer lies not in what we consume, but in what consumes us silently, waiting just beyond perception, hidden in the rhythm of images that never stop. The deeper the pages went, the clearer the pattern became. Multinational corporations, those empires of steel, glass, and glowing screens, were never just businesses. They were conduits. Behind their polished slogans and glossy advertisements lay connections to secret societies whose names have whispered through centuries: Illuminati, Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and other discreet orders of power. The documents hinted that their boardrooms were not merely economic centers, but ritual chambers where forbidden knowledge was translated into strategies of influence. Consumption, disguised as choice, became a ritual of obedience, and the stronger the brand, the deeper its grip on the collective mind. Think of it. Logos designed not only for recognition, but for resonance. Hidden symbols woven into their very geometry. The circle representing eternity and control. The triangle signaling hierarchy and unseen power. The serpent coiled into infinity, promising both temptation and devotion. These shapes, repeated endlessly in corporate design, are not accidents. They echo ancient codes once carved into temples, now stamped into global emblems. To the untrained eye, they are harmless branding. To the initiated, they are instructions, psychological influence disguised as art. But symbols are only one layer. The corporations also mastered ritual. Launch events that resemble ceremonies. Advertising campaigns built around repetition, chant-like slogans, hypnotic rhythms. Even the architecture of headquarters mirrors ancient sacred spaces, designed to evoke awe, reverence, submission. The consumer, walking into these spaces or watching these broadcasts, unknowingly steps into a ritual of manipulation. Every purchase, every like, every repeated phrase feeds the ritual. And in this sense, consumption itself becomes a silent act of devotion to a hidden agenda. Write in the comments, "I will not be controlled." The unsettling truth is that the same corporations shaping your choices are often the very ones funding research into mind control. Technology, entertainment, pharmaceuticals, all merging under the same umbrella of influence. The public sees competition, but the shadows reveal collaboration. Rivals on the surface, allies behind closed doors, united by an agenda that stretches beyond profit. An agenda that seeks not only wealth, but psychological dominance. The more we consume, the more willingly we hand over our perception, our desires, our reality itself. And so the question lingers, pressing at the edges of awareness. If secret societies once cloaked themselves in robes and symbols of power, have they now cloaked themselves in brands, products, and corporations? If hidden rituals once demanded midnight gatherings, do they now unfold in boardrooms and press conferences, amplified by media, broadcast into every home? The dark agenda does not need secrecy anymore. It thrives in plain sight, hidden not by absence, but by excess, overwhelming the senses until obedience feels like freedom. But that's only the surface. Let's go deeper. Because if corporations are merely the instruments, what of the hands that conduct them? Who writes the scripts? Who designs the symbols? Who ensures that the same patterns repeat across industries, nations, and generations? And if the plan has already taken root on a global scale, what does the next phase of this hidden power look like? The answer may already be unfolding, silently, in the everyday rituals we call life. If hidden symbols, propaganda, and secret societies truly walk hand in hand, then nothing we see in modern media can be considered neutral. Every image, every logo, every polished campaign may carry more than surface meaning. What appears as simple persuasion could, in truth, be a ritual, an invocation whispered through color, shape, rhythm. The more you look, the harder it becomes to believe that coincidence explains the repetition of ancient codes reappearing across brands, governments, and entertainment. Could it be that what we consume daily is not only product or story, but fragments of an unseen ceremony guiding our perception? Think about how you feel when a familiar logo flashes before you. A sudden rush of trust, a desire that seems natural, unquestionable. Yet the documents and testimonies we've traced suggest something else. Psychological influence embedded beneath design, a dark agenda woven into the very fabric of culture. If secret societies once gathered in shadows to carve power into stone, now they may operate in boardrooms and media studios, embedding forbidden knowledge into what billions see without suspicion. The unseen becomes routine. Control becomes invisible. And that is the most effective form of mind control, when you no longer recognize it as control at all. Advertising may look like commerce, but when studied closely, it mirrors occult rituals. The repetition of mantras in slogans, the rhythmic chants of jingles, the choreography of mass events, the glow of screens replacing candlelight. Each element works not only on reason, but on the subconscious, bypassing resistance, guiding behavior. Hidden symbols act as anchors, binding emotion to meaning. Ancient codes transform into modern patterns, ensuring continuity between rituals of the past and manipulations of the present. Write in the comments, "I will not be controlled." And yet, the greatest revelation is also the simplest. If our choices are influenced before we even recognize them, how much of our will is truly free? If every decision is surrounded by suggestion, if every preference is shaped by forces unseen, what remains of individuality? Do we awaken when we see the pattern, or does awakening require something more? An act of defiance, a refusal to submit to the invisible hand? The truth is unsettling. We may live inside a vast experiment where every response, every desire, every reaction feeds into the same structure of manipulation. But that's only the surface. Let's go deeper. Because if even our sense of freedom can be scripted, if every act of consumption may serve as part of a ritual we never agreed to join, then the question is no longer about symbols or corporations alone. It becomes something far greater, far more disturbing. Who writes the script of reality itself? And what happens when the final layer of this hidden design is revealed, showing us not only how deeply we've been influenced, but why? You have walked with me through shadows and fragments of hidden design, and if you are still here, it means you are not afraid to question what most accept without hesitation. You have seen how secret societies, forbidden knowledge, hidden symbols, and rituals disguised as culture weave themselves into the very fabric of our daily lives. You now understand that propaganda is never neutral, that logos, colors, and sounds can function as keys, turning locks deep inside the collective mind. But what we uncovered together is only a doorway, the first layer of a much larger structure still waiting to be revealed. If this journey resonated with you, let your presence be felt. Leave a mark, not just as a viewer, but as part of a circle that refuses to remain blind. Write in the comments, "I see the hidden truth," or "No one will control my mind." These are not just phrases, they are signals, declarations of awakening that echo far beyond this moment. Each word written strengthens the invisible chain of those who choose awareness over silence, curiosity over comfort. If the revelations tonight stirred something inside you, if they made you look at the world with new eyes, then let it show. Press the like softly, not as routine, but as a symbol, as a subtle signal that truth leaves an imprint. Your gesture becomes part of this shared ritual of awareness, a sign that the message connected, that the shadows did not succeed in silencing what needed to be seen. And if you wish to keep walking deeper, subscribe. But think of it not as joining a channel. It is more than that. It is stepping into a hidden corridor where every door opened leads to another revelation, another fragment of the unseen puzzle. By subscribing, you align yourself with a path of continuous discoveries, a journey into places where ancient codes and modern manipulation intertwine. The next revelation waits, and those who remain attentive will be the first to see the signs. As you move forward, carry these questions with you. Have you noticed strange symbols in advertisements, in movies, in the brands you encounter every day? Leave your observations in the comments, because your experience may reveal more than you imagine. Sometimes the smallest detail, the mark overlooked by millions, holds the greatest key. And when we piece these fragments together, the hidden truth no longer belongs only to the shadows. It becomes ours. This is not the end, only the continuation of a path that grows darker and more intriguing the further we go. Each revelation is a spark, each video another step into the unknown. Follow the trail, because the unseen is always speaking, always leaving traces for those who dare to notice. The next chapter is already waiting, and its truths may challenge everything you thought you knew. Stay alert, because the symbols never sleep, and the design behind them is still unfolding.